Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between podcast. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, consciousness, and what it all means. Today on the show, I have Raj Shankara. In his first work for the public, former monk Raj Shankara offers the readers a dynamic how-to for becoming a powerful adult. Everything is Your Fault combines Raj's journey from drug-selling thug to Hindu yogi with thought-provoking teachings that show the reader their opportunity for spiritual growth. Having lived as a monk for 12 years, Raj is now back in society as a world yogi, teaching others how to control their mind, body, and emotions. Raj is currently a meditation guide, award-winning writer, author of 4 books, self-development mentor, online coach, fitness and health expert, and business owner. Everything is Your Fault is a powerful transformation of hope. When one of us transforms, we all do in our own way. Welcome, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hi, everybody. If you haven't had a chance yet to find me on Fireside, you can find the link in my Instagram at Dr. Amy Robbins, and then head on over to Fireside. Fireside has been an awesome platform. I'm really enjoying the opportunity to interview my guests live and have audience participation. So if you can find the link in my bio on Instagram. You can follow me at fireside.com/Amy Robbins. Lots of ways to find me there, and just join the conversation. You'll get alerted anytime I start a show. So head on over, check that out. Also, my Patreon page is up and running. A big thank you to everybody who has donated so far. I'm extremely grateful for your support. If you could donate, I would continue to be grateful for anybody who is able to contribute to supporting the show. And if you can't financially support the show, all I ask is that you maybe take a few minutes and rate and review the show if you love it, and also share the show with your friends and family who you think might be interested. This is, I believe, our way of collectively raising the consciousness of the planet, which is something that we definitely need right now more than ever. Also, you can find me on YouTube if you want to watch the videos. Follow me on Instagram at Dr. Amy Robbins, and of course my newsletter, Dr. Amy Robbins at .com, where you can sign up for that, which I have not been great about, but I promise, I'm actually not going to make a promise, but I'm going to really, really try harder to be better about my newsletter. I was consistent for a while, and then summer hit, and I decided I was going to take a little vacay. So summer's over, and I'm going to be back at it. Enjoy this week's show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So you decided in one instantaneous moment to turn your life around. And that was pretty shocking to me. So tell us about the moment where you just decided you were gonna take a completely different path.
Right. I'm very fortunate that I noticed the moment that the universe was kind of giving me. I was pulled over by a police officer one night coming home from a large drug shipment pickup. It's funny to say it out loud. And I was basically, I guess you could say I was eligible to be incarcerated at that moment. All the cop needed to do was just open the back door, open the trunk, and I would have been done with, basically. No contest.
Because what did you have in the car at that time?
My trunk was full of weapons and large amounts of marijuana, cocaine, and I think I had small amounts of test batches of mushrooms and ecstasy. And ecstasy is tough. Each one of those pills is, I believe, a count of manslaughter.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually know someone who went away for having a big jar of them. So our neighborhood was known for that kind of stuff. So it was actually kind of normal to come up as a drug dealer in the south suburbs of Chicago. So I was just kind of playing out that role as a teenager. And so this is the first time, though, I'd actually been stopped in the middle of the night and pulled over with this much kind of material on my persons. And I'm sitting outside after the police officer asked me to get out of the car and go by the trunk. I'm sitting outside, I'm looking at his canine unit, who was obviously detecting everything in my car and barking. And he asked me, can I search you? And can I search your car? And can my dog search you? And can my dog search your car? And I said, sure. I had basically from the driver's seat to the trunk, from those 10 steps or 8 steps, I basically gave up all desire of lying or any kind of intention of getting away. I was basically, I let go of everything. And I kind of took some responsibility. And I said, okay, my life's over. I get it. I did this. I almost wanted this to happen. Let's get it over with. Basically, let's get it over with was what I was thinking. And so after asking me for permission to search me, which he really didn't even need, the police officer just looked at me for about 8 or 10 seconds. And even looking at someone for like 5 straight seconds is a long time, especially someone of authority. And he put his flashlight back in its holster. And he said, I trust you. And he walked away into his car and drove off. So that
How old were you? How old were you?
Was I 18?
So if he would have opened your trunk, your life would have been over as you know it. You would have gone to jail.
Yeah,
prison.
First, I would have been processed in Indiana, and then I would have been taken back to Cook County in Chicago, where I picked up everything, because I crossed state lines with everything. So I would have been processed there that night, and then I would have been taken to jail in Illinois, and then from jail I would have awaited a court case, and then I would have been probably taken to a prison in Chicago, in the cornfields of Chicago. So yeah, and that would have all happened very easily, because I was way past the limit of what's allowed to be considered a minor offense. It would have been a felony. So, and let's see, was it a few months before me? Maybe 6 months before, my partner in selling, also he went to prison. So I was like a one-man show. And they would have just connected the dots, and everything would have been worse probably.
Wow. I
accepted that. It all ran through my mind all at once, and I think I could have easily thought, I'm so lucky, I can now continue on this downward spiral. But I sat there looking around, kind of high from this slap in the face, and thought, wow, I can actually start over, and I will start over. And I did start over. The next day, I basically went through a transfer of ownership. I guess I could have thrown everything away and stuff like that, but I didn't. I gave everything to a subordinate of mine, and told them I was stopping. It would have looked awkward if I had just given up. So I sort of quietly transferred ownership of everything. And I cleaned up my act. I vowed never to break the law. I vowed to give back to society. And then shortly after that, I started an asphalt company with a friend of mine. And from there, the story continues of actually becoming a decent human being.
So can you, because that's pretty remarkable. I mean, usually you hear about transformations taking time and people making decisions and there being a backslide or, whatever it is. And for you,
Sure.
It was just a straightforward trajectory.
Oh, yeah. Well, I am an all or nothing kind of person. I either do something and master it 100% in, or I don't bother. So I think it was just my nature. And I'm still the same way. If I decide I'm going to do something, I'm like overnight, it's like I've been doing it for 10 years. Yeah. So I think it's kind of in my nature.
So tell us so you ended up becoming a monk in a monastery.
Yes.
What does that life look like? And why did you choose that life? I mean, there was something about it when I was reading the book that sounded somewhat like the army in a lot of ways, what I envisioned the army to be like. I've not been in the army. But just that like intense structure and expectations and like not a whole lot of room for missteps. And I guess I didn't expect it to be like that. So can you give us a little insight into what the life of a monk is like and what goes on inside a monastery?
Yeah. And that's a normal visualization and unexpected, very normal to not expect that. Because I was in an institution that was developed, part monastery, part like Navy SEAL Academy, basically.
So talk to me a little bit about this notion of everything is your fault, because that's a really provocative title. And I think a lot of people would say, well, no, it's actually not. Like someone who suffered a horrific tragedy or experiences that weren't their fault. And so what do you say to those people? And what is it about taking responsibility that you feel like helps transform? Because I think that's sort of what you were getting at, is like just taking responsibility, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, that's absolutely correct. And you have to appreciate all of those levels, those perspectives, because, and the teaching itself of responsibility is not meant for everyone all the time, right? So, you cannot, and I learned this from my guru very early on, you cannot go up to someone who just lost a family member and say, hey, it's karma, man. You have to enter into someone's pain through different levels. And maybe a year after the traumatic event, you can, as the emotion subsides somewhat and the colors in their memory banks fade a bit, you can say, okay, so let's talk about the philosophy of life and what we believe in and why all of this maybe happen. And then maybe you can introduce karma and responsibility and things like that and how we can move forward. But so I came up with that idea in the monastery when I realized that I was my own worst enemy, basically, right? I was a narcissistic monster. When I went into the monastery, I wanted to achieve things. I wanted to be a spiritual being, but I didn't know anything. I didn't even know that I was difficult to work with. I didn't know that I made other people's lives more challenging just by communicating with me, or lack thereof, like poor communication skills, right? So it hit me after about 4 years of working with a team in the monastery every day, working with some amazing individuals to recondition me and say, you know, they had to sit me down over years and say, you've got this hard shell from the world, and we're trying to kind of break some of that down and get you to self-reflect and look at yourself. So for someone like that, for someone who is egotistical, narcissistic, monstrous, that person needs to get hit over the head with a responsibility check. And yes, everything is your fault. You're making other people's lives worse. Stop it, right? Now, for someone with trauma, I still believe that there's a responsibility teaching in there. For example, and I've had a few years to kind of bounce this philosophy off people. And on my podcast, Man in the Making, we have on people who've gone through extreme challenges. I mean, challenges is not the right word. Horrific trauma is a better phrase. Like one of our episodes with a woman, Jessica Kramer, who was sexually abused from preteen to high school within the family, and threatened at gunpoint during high school, during years of high school sexual abuse. So that is another situation where we have to look at the person after the trauma. And this woman is an amazing person, living an amazing life, teaching people that they're responsible for what happens after the fact.
Yeah.
Right. Do you let the person win by keeping them in your psyche, keeping the poison of what happened in there? Or do you liberate yourself, go from victim to survivor to thriver, and truly liberate yourself? And now she has compassion for the terrible people, in her family who were obviously mentally disturbed and going through their own horrific things from their upbringing. So that is another level of
compassion and understanding and empathy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And look, these people like that are superheroes. It's just, and partly why we interview people like that, and why I recommend to students to read about trauma is it gives you another perspective. Like, hey, some people have really gone through hell. So that's important to know about, and it's important to keep talking about so that you can bounce your own story off. It's like measuring your pain on a level of pain. And while everyone goes through their own experience, and you don't want to compare yourself to other people necessarily,
right,
there is a level of
perspective taking, I guess.
Yeah. And seeing where you level up, like where you measure up to other experiences, so that you can start recovering as soon as possible. Because if you've never heard Jessica Kramer's story and you're an individual who's been broken from horrific trauma, you're worse off, right? So exposing yourself to other people in that same situation who have since bloomed into an entirely different person, well, that's powerful. And I talked to her about the book, and she helped me with some of my doubts, like, oh my God, how, what am I saying here? And she said the same thing. It's if you had told me that, in high school, right, like that wouldn't have made sense. But but she was able to change because she realized that she actually had the power now, and to not give that power away, psychically, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, on all levels, right? Physically, that she's now in control. And that's what the book is trying to help people with, in a sense. Control. We're in control once we're responsible.
So before we wrap up here, because we just have a few more minutes, can you tell me your perspective on meditation? And then I wanted you also, you talk about this in the book, explain the concept of touching in for the practiced meditator, and when you get to the point where you're considered a practiced meditator.
Oh yeah, those are good questions.
Thanks.
So the first one, what is my
perspective on meditation?
Okay, so my perspective on meditation is, I'm trained to understand meditation from our lineage of monks, which taught that meditation is the restraint of mental activity, nothing more, nothing less. So what is mental activity? Well, it's fivefold. So it's correct knowledge, incorrect knowledge, sleep, fantasy, and memory. Okay, so what's important about that is, I'm very long-winded, so I apologize. That those five things make up life. If you go back in your memory, right, already you've hit one of the things, and you think about your consciousness and where it's been, it's either been thinking it knows something correctly, thinking it knows something incorrectly, or erroneous knowledge. You've been sleeping, remembering something, and fantasizing, right? So if we close that off, we're left with meditation, which is to be, discovered by the meditator. To go beyond that and say, you'll experience this, this, and this is basically a spiritual malpractice. It's depends on the dedication of the student. That's my basic meditative perspective. Touching in is a great phrase. I absolutely love that phrase. Did I say that in the book, or that's your phrase? I said that in the book.
I don't think I'm going to take credit for that one, even though you love it. I'm going to give you the credit. I didn't come up with that.
So touching in, to me, I learned this from another monk who now lives in San Francisco, an amazing person named Kashi Sentilnava. Touching in is when you know that, I'll answer both questions at the same time. That's when you know that you're an advanced meditator. Usually in meditation, we have to have several layers of practice before then to actually get to the meditation, which are attention and observation. And that's paying attention to your breathing, right? Watching your thoughts. Maybe it's all these cliche practices. So those are steps to kind of get in the back door of the mind and get inside yourself. Because if we just tried all of a sudden, the mind would take that opportunity to flood you with something important or trivial. It doesn't care. So when we can touch in and we can actually skip over some of those steps and go straight to restraining mental activity, restraining the five activities, then we know we've made some progress as a practitioner. And the amount of preparation we focus on a day-to-day basis can be drastically reduced. So we can actually spend more time in meditation as opposed to preparation.
So this sounds like a bit of a different take on meditation as well.
Perhaps. What would you be referring to? Wow.
Well, this feels a bit more, I don't know, maybe restrictive in some ways. Like it almost feels like there's a right way and a wrong way to meditate.
Yes.
And so in my experience, I feel like there is no right and wrong way to meditate. It's like the notion of just sort of sitting quietly and trying to quiet your mind, attend to your breath, observe your thoughts, not connect to them is, and however that happens, like it's not, sometimes when I sit in meditation, my mind is bouncing off the walls, right? It's like, oh, I need to make dinner tonight. What are we going to have for dinner? I forgot to sign my kid up for that activity.
Of course.
The sun is on me right now. That feels really good. Oh shit, I'm supposed to be meditating. This isn't meditation. Like it's that sort of beautiful waterfall of thoughts. And it's when I get to the thought of, oh no, I forgot to sign my kid up for their program or whatever, it's not doing anything about that. It's just observing that that's my experience in that moment.
Yes. And you're 100% right. I was trained so if you look at like a weekend runner versus an Olympic athlete, right? They probably have different perspective on what it means to be a successful runner. The Olympic athlete needs to think in milliseconds and dedication on a day-to-day basis for hours a day. A weekend or part-time runner looks at much different milestones over a much different span of time. Mm-hmm. And that's because neither one is right or wrong about running. They're just talking about it from different perspectives. My perspective is definitely one of a restrictive nature, purist nature, orthodox, because I was trained by, using the same example, I was basically trained by Olympians in the field of Eastern philosophy.
But is that not connected to ego then? Like how do you...
Everything is connected to ego.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. How do you kind of remove ego from, we have to be the best meditators that there are? Because then it's based in ego and not in like, I'm perfectly happy being a weekend running meditator. Like that's right. That's good. I'm good with that. Like I don't need to be the Olympic meditator.
Exactly. So there's no comparison here and there's no best. I wouldn't use that language when I talk about meditation. So if let's say I'm going to teach meditation, I'm going to first find out who I'm teaching. I'm not going to just go into a meditation full of a room full of people and say, all right, here's what's going to happen and what we're going to do. If I have to first say, okay, I'm going to hold an advanced meditation class. We're going to use this technique, and this is exactly what's going to happen. If we're going to be in a beginner meditation class, I'm probably not going to touch into meditation. I'm probably going to touch into, let's just sit, pay attention to our mind, see what's going on. How do we feel? Does our leg itch? And just work through. So there's got to be different levels so that we can have a conversation, so that we can communicate. If I'm sitting in front of a beginner and just keeping my personal favorite technique, well, I wouldn't be a very versatile teacher, but I was trained that way. And I can teach any level of for anyone. Is one way better than the other? No, it's just one thing in the end. It's all a progression to advanced meditation, which is restricting the 5 mental activities. And there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. That's not worse than what I do when I meditate. We're doing the same thing, but we're just on different timelines.
So what goes on in your mind when you meditate? Nothing, like just quiet.
I was trained to bypass the mind. So the mind is a self-creating mechanism. Mm-hmm. It's designed to create, preserve, destroy, conceal, reveal. And it's just ongoing on its own energy system. It doesn't need you. Okay, so that means that we're two different things all of a sudden. So I'm not my mind. So if I'm not my mind, then there's me. Then I'm something else. So what is that? And in meditation, we want to go through a process. If we want to figure that out, if we want to lower our blood pressure, that's different. If we want to go and figure out how do I touch into who I really am, then I have to learn through systematic and methodical practice to bypass the distractions and the creations that the mind is trying to produce. And if I can do that, well, then I can go to different levels of myself, and that's a very addictive thing. It's very special too.
Got it. Okay. So really the ultimate aim is to silence the mind in that way, to deepen, you look at it as to deepen your understanding of yourself. I'm wondering where consciousness fits into all of this. Like, in deepening your understanding of yourself, are you then raising your conscious awareness?
Well, so I believe that everything is consciousness. You cannot affect consciousness. You cannot deepen. There's nothing to deepen. Consciousness exists. Enlightenment exists. The soul exists. Everything is perfect all at this moment. There's no real maturation going on. What's going on is that we are removing things that are in the way, right?
Gotcha.
Like ego.
Okay.
We are so ego is this fabric of reality blocking us from pure consciousness. What we're getting is a diluted form of consciousness, like having an air conditioner pump out cold air, but the filter is full of debris. So you're only getting particulates of debris and half cooled air, right? Mm-hmm. So I believe people are walking around as this partial version of themselves. But that doesn't mean this 100% pure, perfect being isn't there, and it has to be developed. That being is there already. And what they need to do is take out the filter, clean it up, put it back in, and go from there. And they'll be getting that cool air as they should have been the whole time. And I believe that's a Hindu concept of spirituality. We're really breaking down what I believe in life and death and consciousness. And that is certainly what I've come to not only believe in based on faith, but also based on experience. And then to touch in quickly, as you importantly said, is that the goal? Is that the final goal of meditation? And really,
goal and meditation sort of shouldn't run hand in hand, right? Because I guess that goes against, to have a goal in meditation feels counter to meditation.
Very true. Having a concept takes you away from a conceptless space. So yes, and to say that, is that the goal or anything? It really depends on the person. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I was trained in an elite field of thinkers and I think some of the world's greatest yogis. But isn't that even counter? Doesn't that run counter? Like, elite field of yogis seems to me to run counter to what it means to be a yogi, which is not elitist at all. Well, elitist is it depends on who you're speaking to, if it's elitist or not. If you ask them what if they're powerful and effective and elite, they would say no. But I'm telling you as an observer, right, as a student.
Gotcha.
And I believe that changes things. I believe that changes perceptions. And I don't think that has any effect on their own ego, because they're not the one saying it. I am. you like, it's important to agree. And I like that you're bringing that up and pushing on that, because that is good. That is important. And we need distinctions, in my opinion. We need definitions, because if we don't agree on certain values, then we will never be able to communicate and have an effective conversation. We'll actually just be on two different levels and disagree. But if I'm going to listen to a medical advice from someone and I have my pick of doctors, where am I going to then secondarily look deeper as to which is the better doctor, right? So I would choose the doctor that went to the better school. Is that necessarily making one doctor better? No, not at all. But it's certainly a good place to start. So if I'm a student of yogic philosophy, and I'm looking to achieve very high standards of yoga, I'm going to look for the best, most renowned teachers there are.
Right, which I totally can appreciate. And I'm trying to understand the social, the construction of this all, and how we're trying to like deconstruct while also setting up a framework for people to like not just, go to any person who says I'm a meditation teacher, right?
100%. That's the adventure that we're all on. And we call that being and becoming. We're on this balance pole where we're like, I'm trying to lose myself, but at the same time, I need someone to do that. And I need that someone to be pretty good at it, at losing themselves, who's done it before. And I need to be really good at this, but also not be good at having an ego about it. So should I think that I'm good at it, or should I tell people that I'm good at it, or just be good at it and never get anywhere?
And then there you are in a monastery for 12 years, right? Like that's the cycle.
I mean,
should I leave? Should I stay? What does it mean to leave? How do I stay? How do I define my staying versus leaving?
So I have found that in this awesome dance, it's not important, it's not beneficial to necessarily talk spontaneously about what you've done and reflect on it and think that it's a certain thing, because you have to watch the ego, right? Exactly like you're saying. If you're going to be a yogic practitioner, you are 24/7 looking out for the ego, because it's going to come back. It's another self-creating mechanism, because it's the operating system, and the mind is like the computer, but we're the user. So we have to always kind of run these virus scans to make sure that the ego is not coming back. And one of those ways is to listen to our language and watch what we're saying and watch what we're thinking. And so, I don't, apply to speak about these things. I wait for people to ask me. I didn't even want to write the book. A student, begged me to write it, and I did it because I cared about them a lot. So you have to find these different ways around the ego, right? Without it really knowing. There's got to be a surreptitious type advance, because we are wanting to get better and be better individuals, while also not losing our decency and humility and compassion. And so that's what makes life really fun, is that it's not so easy. It's a bit of a challenge. We take a few steps forward, one step back, and we learn from each experience. And at the end of the day, hopefully we can just relax, have a glass of wine, and just laugh at ourselves.
That's a tricky dance, not the having a glass of wine and laughing, but the dance of ego and all of this. So Raj, thank you so much for your time and for kind of sparring with me a little bit today.
Bring it.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work, if they're interested in becoming a monk, going to live in a monastery, whatever it is? Where can they find you?
Rajanshankara.com is like the hub of everything, and Googling Raj Monk is actually probably sufficient for social media and all that stuff.
R-A-J Monk?
Yeah.
Oh, love it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Doctor.
Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.